Bulking is absolutely useless. It's a remnant of the past, and it's something I don't really want to see again. Now, there is only one reason that someone should bulk, and the only reason someone should be bulking is to gain fat. Not to gain muscle, not to maximize a sort of growth, because apparently maintenance doesn't do it the same. Literally bulk to gain fat, to get fatter. You're really, really lean. You just did a bodybuilding show, or you just happen to be a lean guy. You know, you have an athletic background. You weren't used to putting food in your body, and you just weren't really able to get to a higher body fat. That's the only reason someone should be bulking. It's a process that makes you get fat. It's not something that helps you build muscle. And let's kind of dig into this. Let's explore a little bit about why bulking and maintenance is the same for muscle growth, even though people don't actually understand what's going on there. So the problem that's happened so far with nutrition is everyone who's been exploring nutrition, for the most part, doesn't actually understand muscle growth. Yeah, they're focused on nutrition. That's completely fine. There are some few people out there who understand how the two work, but majority don't. And so when they're looking at things that are investigating muscle growth, most of the time they're seeing outcomes, right? People who are bulking get this, people who aren't get this. And so a lot of these people, in their mind, they're assuming that there's some sort of mechanism where when someone has more protein than they need, like overfeeding, or maybe there's more energy than they need, that it somehow ends up building more muscle. No. But that's not the point I want to focus on. The main focus of this video is we're kind of combining what actually matters for growth with what's actually going on inside the body, putting them together, and then coming to the conclusion, this is what's actually going on. So first things first, when it comes to bulking versus maintenance, there is one difference. Like, we can very easily see the difference. The difference is one has more calories than the other. Maintenance is you're eating what your body's using, and then bulking is you're eating more than your body's using. So this is an energy surplus. This is energy's the same. So imagine we're a system. It just means we're staying, like our phone is staying on 66% forever. It's plugged in, but it's staying at the same. And there might be some fluctuations throughout the day, but when the night's over, when the morning begins, we're basically there, 66%. We're not consistently plugging it in and then going beyond 100% and going at ramping up and up and up because our battery has the potential to be filled with unlimited energy. That's not what's really going on. So when this all comes together, we have to look at the process of muscle growth. And the thing about muscle growth is when it all comes together, we're talking about grams. Literally grams a day of muscle are being added. And when I say that, I'm talking about the actual contractile tissue. I'm not talking about any sort of water that might be added to it or any sort of glycogen that might be added. Literally just the muscle itself. We're talking grams a day. Believe it or not, to add grams a day, it does not require that much energy. Certainly not things that go out to 250 or 500. I mean, you can see this. When you see the studies, no matter what, when they're having these surpluses, you see that they gain a lot of fat. And you see that when we dial the surplus up and up and up, it's just more fat we're getting. It's not actually additional muscle, which if there was something unique to that sort of energy surplus, we would see more muscle as you go along, which is not what's actually going on. So there has to be something going on. And I mean, it's kind of obvious, like if it's not the energy, there has to be something going on. And this is kind of where we have to take a look at it from a muscle growth perspective. Because with muscle growth, we have two things. We have mechanical tension and we have motor unit recruitment. Mechanical tension is basically the stimulus in the muscle. Muscle is getting used, it's getting challenged, and then there's a sensor inside the muscle. The muscle's basically saying, hey, we need to get bigger. And then you've got motor unit recruitment, and this is what targets the muscles to be turned on. So higher motor unit recruitment, we're getting more muscles, well, more muscle fibers, and then the actual stimulus to the muscle fiber determines whether or not it grows. So this is kind of why a lot of people who come to this video won't have heard of these things before. We've spoken about them a lot on the channel, so that is something to continue watching videos, maybe some more ones, maybe some future ones to understand what's going on there. But to kind of give you a couple examples here, high motor unit recruitment, low mechanical tension would be something like an explosive jump. You know about plyometrics, where you're trying to get really fast, really good at basketball, really good at sports. You understand that the muscle isn't actually producing an absolute ton of force. It's not really being difficultly challenged, but because it's using all of the muscles at once, it's able to go. I hope that makes sense, but we're not really pushing the jumps to failure, are we? And then mechanical tension, when we're actually trying to grow, this could have like absolutely almost no motor unit recruitment, but the mechanical tension can still be there. Say we're super fatigued, we're dying, we didn't get any sleep, we haven't eaten anything all day, we can still use the muscle. And when we're using the muscle fibers that have been activated, because this is the activator and this is the signal, the muscle fibers that have been activated are able to experience that tension, which is able to cause growth. It's part of why, if I'm going around doing household chores, I'm able to maintain some of my muscle fibers, because that's giving it a stimulus. But if I spent a week in bed straight, I'm probably going to drop a lot of weight from muscle loss. Now, awesome. So these two things are the things that matter for growth. And if you understand how muscle growth works, it's literally, we get this signal. The signal is maybe in a high magnitude based on this one. It's the signal itself. Signal exists, and all the signal really does is it creates a demand for growth. Now, when this demand exists, it's almost like a checklist, right? Do we have enough protein? Is there some energy we can use? Let's do it. And then it does it, and it builds the muscle. And that is what's going on. So what this means is, if we're not in the surplus, then so long as we've got enough protein, which is actually going to add proteins to the muscle, building blocks of tissue basically, as long as we've got that and we don't have like an insanely low energy deficit where we have no body fat and we haven't eaten anything today, which is not the case. This is what I'm talking about earlier. We'll get back into how body fat plays a role into this. But if that's the case, it means there's either going to be something which affects mechanical tension or something that will affect motor unit recruitment. These two things, if reduced, will obviously cause less growth. If we have fibers that aren't active, they can't grow. And they also can't sustain growth that they might have. So they're going to shrink, they're going to atrophy. Sure, it might be a small amount, but obviously you want the highest amount possible. And so this is what kind of comes from this. The only difference between a surplus and maintenance in terms of what's going on with these two things here is that when you're on a surplus, you're getting all this extra energy. And so what your body would do is it will have something called carb stores, glycogen stores, whatever you want to call it. So you have your liver and you have your muscles. And so what will happen when we're in the surplus, before we're going to store fat, we're going to max out the liver stores, we're going to max out the muscle stores. So we have full muscle stores in those, full glycogen in those, pretty good. And what that basically means is we'll go into a little bit later how glycogen actually affects these two things here, but that's the only difference. And the awesome thing about this is there are things we can do at maintenance to make sure that we're maxing out the skeletal muscle to ensure that we're able to get those glycogen stores full. And the thing about a glycogen store being full, which is really, really interesting, is we're not actually able in the muscle tissue to bring the glucose into the blood the second it's in the muscle. For whatever reason, the body just decided to be this way. Through years of evolution, determined it was the best thing. People can have their theories on why it would determine that that's a good thing evolutionary. But it decided that the glucose that is in your muscle will not enter the blood again. So what that means is you could have a really, really low blood glucose, and your skeletal muscle is not going to start sending things into the blood. Instead, what's going to happen is it's going to go to the liver. Liver's going to say, yeah, let's balance this. Let's do some osmosis. If the liver can't, the pancreas is going to come in. It's going to get the body fat to start basically entering the blood to be used as energy. Really, really simple, right? So here is what's going on with those glycogen stores. And this is a big part of why people see different growth at maintenance and at a bulk. We can very obviously see that, there is no reason why we wouldn't be able to build muscle. Not only can you see people building muscle at deficit and at maintenance, but there's no reason why this is impossible, right? We're able to draw energy from those fat stores. We're able to have energy in the skeletal muscle, in those glycogen stores, and still bring things out to then power and then have some thermodynamics, because you have to have an energy system not actually losing energy. Well, it's not lost in the sense of it disappears or it's used. It's just transferred. Everything's transferred. Heat exists, so we're losing stuff there and it's dissipating into the environment. Every time you exhale, you're bringing out energy. These are the sort of things that's going on. It's the universe contains the same amount. It's just being moved into different places. Really simple explanation. But let's talk about glycogen stores. So the really interesting thing about glycogen stores, remember the only difference here between the bulk and maintenance is that the bulk has full glycogen stores and the maintenance doesn't. So what's the difference? Well, glycogen stores actually send really, really high fatigue mechanisms, well, not mechanisms, but signals back. So when you're low on glycogen, when you haven't replenished it, at maintenance, what you're going to get is it's going to start going blum, 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 and you're going to get fatigued. And what that ends up meaning is that your motor unit recruitment actually drops down. So you're not activating as many muscle fibers as you'd be able to. What this also means is that if you're in a cut, the same thing happens. You have a lot less glycogen stores, way more fatigue, and there are some other fatigue mechanisms unrelated to glycogen stores attached to that, but the motor unit recruitment gets even lower. And what happens then is a majority of the muscle loss we see when we talk about, I want to preserve my muscle, a majority of it comes from the fact that we literally have less motor unit recruitment, so we're not able to give the muscle fibers stimulus which have grown, so the muscle fibers have to atrophy because nothing is keeping them there. Thing is, I've tried to explain to people a lot is your body, as expensive as it is to have skeletal muscle, your body wants to keep it so long as you're providing the actual stimulus to keep it. And so when we don't have that, it's going to drop quick. But that doesn't mean that the second we just have less energy, it's gone. It's all about whether or not we have, that checklist. Do we have enough protein? Is there energy we can use? And then is there literally the stimulus? Is there the demand that's being created because it has been signaled, because it has been activated? Or are we going to drop, 20 pounds in a couple of days because we're losing muscle tissue? Muscle tissue has a fifth of the energy as fat. If you actually think that your body is going to be using that as energy, it means you're dropping weight very, very quickly. You're getting weak very, very quickly because your body is instantly getting rid of it. The second it doesn't have a need for it, a demand that exists, it's going to get rid of it. And I'm not talking about, a day or 2 or 3 or 4, but even a week out, we are starting to see some of that loss. 2 weeks out, we are starting to see that sort of loss. If you throw someone in the bed and they do not move, they drop weight very quickly, they lose muscle very, very quickly. Anyway, glycogen stores, they send this fatigue mechanism, motor neuron recruitment gets down. Well, guess we have to bulk now. Guess I was wrong. Bulking is still effective and we need that to get the glycogen stores up. No, my friend. See, glycogen stores have one window where they're able to be completely maximized in one specific place, being the skeletal muscle. And you've probably heard about this a lot of times before. You might even have done it for a while, but incorrectly. The anabolic window. See, in biochemistry, when we say anabolic, we're not talking about building muscle, okay? That is an anabolic process, sure, but anabolic literally means building. So we have two things, catabolic, anabolic. Anabolic build, catabolic break. And there are tons of anabolic processes. Building fat is anabolic. Breaking down fat is catabolic. No matter what you do with that energy, it is catabolic. And so one of the anabolic processes we have in this anabolic window is glycogen, making glycogen. And where are we talking about the glycogen? Well, we're talking about it in the skeletal muscle. See, in about 2 hours after your workout's finished, the muscle cells are in the perfect position to synthesize as much glycogen as possible from your blood. So what that means is if you've just finished a workout and you're carbing up, the carbs are pretty much, they're not getting split normally between the liver and the muscle cells. They're going straight to those muscle cells. And there's things we can add in. It's not just about getting it in as soon as possible. It's about having a bit of a ratio with the protein. We'll talk about that later. It's about speeding up the digestion and the absorption of the actual carbs you're consuming. It's about removing fat and fiber. Well, we'll go over all the recommendations, the requirements that I put together to make sure you're able to get there. But if you do this, if you program it correctly by using that post-workout anabolic window, you're able to counteract the benefit. Well, it's not really a counteract, is it? You're able to replicate the benefit that a bulk has over maintenance. And you're able to reduce that fatigue. You're able to have the same motor unit recruitment you would have when it comes to bulking, without needing to bulk, without needing to get fat. But let's go back a little bit, because we do actually need to go back, and let's talk about how we're actually going to do this. Because this is nutrition programming, and it's not entirely about this post-workout period. It's also about your daily carbs, right? We need to be getting as many carbs as possible. Fat is important. Fat has two uses. We have essential fatty acids. We have ALA and LA. Those are important. Get those. We have conjugated essential fatty acids, which is like it's like EPA or something, DHA. The exact acronyms slip my mind, but what it basically means is, fatty fish, eggs, flaxseed, sunflower oil, these things like the fats, which are essential. Our body cannot produce them, so we need it in our diet. And then there's I think it's 5 to 10 grams a day to actually be able to take in fat-soluble vitamins. That's what we need. That's the fat we need. Polyunsaturated fat, monounsaturated fat, unsaturated fat, saturated fat, not necessary. The stuff that it provides, our body fat provides. And we can also turn in the carbs we're eating into that same body fat to be able to be used for the other processes we use fat for in the body. So, absolutely awesome. What this means is we get the protein we need, we get the fat we need, which is a lot lower than you expect. Find out what sort of sources have those essential ones and the conjugated essential ones. And then, add a little bit more. This will probably end up being like 40 to 50, maybe 60. And then we get as much carbs as possible, because carbs are also going to be filling up those glycogen stores. It's the best thing you can get. And then the post-workout period. What are we having? Well, before we hit the gym, we probably do want to have some carbs as well. Maybe if we're feeling particularly low on a day, maybe we do bring something to the gym with us. But having some rice before, having some honey before, literally just anything that that's going to get you in you quick. You can Google, and we'll talk about later when we talk about the post-workout, because that's more important. But get some carbs before. Make sure they're hitting fast. Don't have something like oats, which takes 6 hours to actually be able to access the energy. So post-workout period. First thing you need to do is view this in your mind as something that happens as soon as possible. Workout's finished and you're doing it. You could have this easier by removing barriers. I like to consider something like it's pre-cooked, or you shove it in the microwave, or it's a shake or a drink or a sweet, just very easy to get without having to sit there cooking for a ton, especially if you've done an intense exercise or an intense workout. So what this ends up being is stuff like rice, potato, not the skin, that has too much fiber, but the actual potato itself, obviously not a sweet potato, because that is kind of too low GI. High GI basically just means acting fast. You can get sugar power, you can get dextrose, you can get maltodextrin, you can get straight up Haribos and sweet, completely fine. This is all going straight to your muscle. It's not actually going to be messing you up. It's going to be giving them the energy they need in the most digestible form, in the window where it's able to digest it the best. We don't have to worry about doing this slowly. We want it to be as fast as possible, so it goes there. There's other things you can get. Obviously, you can get some bread and jam, but the way we get the carbs don't matter. I'm just giving you some suggestions here. The fact that it's high GI, which means fast digesting, matters. And then for this, we want to get about 1.2 grams of carbs for every kilo of body weight. Something people mess up here, which is why I'm going to point it out as a disclaimer. When it comes to this grams of carbs, I'm not talking about grams of bread, grams of sugar, grams of rice. I'm talking about grams of carbs. So when you log it, you need to view it as carbs the same way you'd view protein as protein, instead of protein as grams of chicken breast. Awesome. The next thing you need to get, and the things that come next aren't as important as the timing and the amount, but they still matter. So the next thing we need to get is a 4-to-1 ratio of carbs to fat. So let's say I need 80 grams of carbs, that's going to be 20 grams of protein. Now in your mind, you can see how easy it would to be having a carb-based shake with some protein thrown in. And the interesting thing here is kind of going back to when I said earlier, the anabolic window is not about having protein after the workout, it's about having those carbs, but having some protein in there makes it actually easier to synthesize in the muscle, speeds that up, so it's a good thing. That's kind of it. Minimize those fats, minimize those fibers, and, well, not fibers, but fiber, and you're good to go to get into your fiber. So what does this all mean? Well, when you do this, the glycogen stores get full. We don't have that fatigue mechanism. we have energy for our workouts. We're able to get maximal most unit recruitment, maximal mechanical tension. And what that means is when we compare that to a bulk, there's absolutely nothing good about the bulk. But the bulk is good for one thing, and that's for getting fat, as I said earlier, because there are times when you need to get fat. So if you are already quite fat, if you're above 15% body fat, your number one priority is getting down to 15% body fat. Then you can go on maintenance and you can follow the protocol and you can make sure you're getting the best gains possible without having to bulk. But if you are below 10% body fat, or if you feel like you want to go up to 15% body fat to just have the experience of bulking, the experience of having those full glycogen stores, so you know what to expect, so you know what you should be feeling when you go into the gym, you can go up to 15% body fat. If you're below 10, you definitely need to get up to 15% body fat. And in truth, I think it might be nice to prolong this as almost like a, mental thing, knowing that we're going to be at maintenance for a while, because you are. When you get to that 15%, you're going to be here following the maintenance protocol for a while. We're literally stopping this when we get to 10%, and we'll talk about what to do then. But this maintenance protocol will literally be, I don't even know how long it's going to be. Like, it could be years, it could be months, it could be decades if you're that advanced. But what I can tell you is that on the journey here, you're going to eventually need to add a little bit of calories. See, maintenance calories is an energy thing, right? Energy in, energy out is equal. As you're building more muscle, you are every now and then going to have to offset it by adding a few more calories. And you'll know when that happens as you're going along, as you're tracking your weight and seeing what's going on. Another thing you also might notice, especially if you're on creatine, is you might be gaining weight even though you're on maintenance, which doesn't really make much sense because you're not in a surplus. But the truth is, muscle is something which brings in glycogen. It is something that brings in water. When you're building muscle, even if it's worth the same amount of energy as fat, there is going to be this weighing more. I hope that makes sense. I mean, it should make sense, but that's not really the point I'm trying to say here. The point is, eventually you're going to get to 10%. It's inevitable. And when you get to that 10%, you bulk up to 15% again. The awesome thing about this is this bulk doesn't have to be slow. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be tedious. The bulk just means you're getting fat. And the getting fat is going up to 15%. Because there's no benefit to muscle growth from this bulk, you're literally using it as a way to gain fat, which means the time it takes doesn't matter so long as we get to the outcome. So you could take this very, very quickly. You could do it very, very short. But throughout the entire period you are doing that bulk, you're going to be getting the same growth as if you weren't bulking and you were at 15% anyway. So it doesn't really matter whether you take it slow or long. It's entirely up to you. Hey, you want to stay leaner for a bit longer? Go slower. Going to be the same growth anyway. You want to go a bit quicker just because you don't like eating more? Then do it quick. It's entirely up to you. It's a process to gain fat, not a process to gain muscle. And here's the awesome thing about this entire thing. The whole bulk cut cycle is not good. When you bulk, you gain fat. When you cut, you lose fat. This is the bulk cut cycle. Along the way, because of the full glycogen stores, you might gain some muscle. But if you're not doing this whole, carb loading, if you're not having the anabolic window, if you're not focusing on having carbs in your diet, the most unit recruitment's going to down. The actual mechanical tension is not going to be able to get to those fibers. They're going to atrophy. And what you're going to end up with is someone who's smaller, someone who's not able to preserve the muscle they've even gained in the bulk, which is even worse than not bulking in the first place. But I guess what I'm trying to say is this is important. Not many people have spoken about this, and the guys who have spoken about it, they've given people nuggets. They've said, look, we don't even talk about nutrition. You need to go figure it out. We're not telling you the answers. We tell you everything you need to know. You have all the tools, and if you can't put it together, then that's on you. But I put it together for you, and if you appreciated this, please leave a subscribe. Please ask questions. Go watch the other stuff. Actually, I shouldn't actually say all that rubbish before talking about this one point, because this point is super important. And I'm sure a lot of people are gone now, which kind of sucks. I should have mentioned it earlier. But none of this works if you are not training properly. If you are not training properly, no matter how much protein you have, no matter how many carbs you synthesize in the muscle cells, well, glycogen, not really carbs, no matter how many things you do right with nutrition program, with your sleep, with anything, if the workout program is not good, you will not grow. You will not grow maximally. Do not do that. do it properly. Thank you for watching.